Well, that's it. I am never watching 99 episodes of a cartoon in less than a week again. Oh shit, that's right! I haven't eaten anything since I got trapped in here by Theta. It's been like a fucking week. How have I survived? I need some food, but I can't leave my room. Shit, I know what to do. Oh, fuck. Shit.
What?
Hey, I've been trapped in my room by someone who's gonna kill me if I try to leave. I'm kinda hungry. Can you, like, toss me up some food or something?
You want me to call the police or something?
Nah, can you just toss me up some snacks or something? Thanks.
It's time for Animaniacs, and we're zany to the max.
Hey, my father, I want for forever. Let me try that again. Hey everybody, Sol here. I have only one rule here. If it's animated, I'll comment on it. And it's the month of May, my friends. So I think it's time. It's time to look at the slew of cartoons that got made by the fantastic team in Warner Brothers, starting with Animaniacs. You get it? Because it's the month of May, so we're gonna be reviewing Animaniacs. Animaniacs is a 2D animated series created by Tom Ruegger, produced by Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation, and was the second animated series produced by Amblin, following Tiny Toon Adventures. The series aired originally in 1993 on Fox Kids, but later moved to the WB starting in 1999, resulting in a total of 99 episodes airing over 5 seasons, and causing multiple spin-offs of some of the main cast of characters from the series. Alright everybody, are you ready to get Animani and totally insane-y? I know I am, especially now that I've actually had something to eat, so let's put our eyes on a bit of Animaniacs. Much like that horrible abomination I talked about recently that I foolishly compared to this series, there isn't exactly an overarching plot of any sort. Though the many characters that trot about in this cast do all have proper establishments and backstories to a certain extent, so I'll just talk about the setup instead with the Warner Brothers, known as Yakko, Wacko, and their sister Dot. These kids of an indiscriminate species were created by a Warner Brothers cartoonist back in the 1930s, and subsequently went on to wreak havoc on the Warner Brothers studio lot with their out-of-control zaniness. After their cartoons stopped being successful, they were deemed to be more trouble than they were worth, and were subsequently locked inside the studio water tower for around 60 years. Because apparently child labor laws were a fucking joke back then, and cartoon characters aren't real citizens of the US. It's a good thing they didn't have to eat or drink to stay alive, or Warner Brothers would have had a pretty big PR nightmare on their hands. Anyway, in the early 90s, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot managed to escape from their incarceration in the water tower, and go right back to their insane, rampaging ways, terrorizing the inhabitants of the Burbank lot, as well as driving their psychiatrist Otto von Scratch-and-Sniff to the depths of madness with their incomprehensible cartoon behavior. Oh my god, when you separate the setup from the cartoonish antics and the comedy, it's actually really fucked up in like a super dark kind of way. I mean, they exploit unhinged children for entertainment, lock them up for years, and then when they escape, they mentally torture an innocent psychiatrist and nurse. It's like a goddamn horror movie, for fuck's sakes. Luckily, this whole thing is played for laughs and is a lot funnier in the actual series, so there's that at least. You won't have to worry about seeing these cute cartoons caught up in a saw puzzle or whatever. In all honesty, the setup is irrelevant, since you can enjoy the show without knowing any of the backstories on the Warner Brothers or other characters. The structure is more like a variety show, with around 2 to 3 segments taking up the runtime that use an array of characters in different formats, like songs, quick gags, infotainment, and other such little interludes. While some of the segments are downright piss-your-pants hilarious, others feel a bit lacking on the humor. Still, we'll get into more of that later. I think I went on way too long for a series that has virtually no plot at all, so, apologies everyone, but let's move on to the characters. Much like pretty much every anime series I review, there's way too many characters to talk about everyone in depth, so it's gonna be cursory glances all around today. Wait a sec. That is a lot like an anime. An anime is in the title of this show. And wait a minute. It was actually animated. A lot of episodes were animated by the Japanese animation company Tokyo Movie Shinsha. Shit, guys. I think Animaniacs might be a closet anime. So the title characters are Yakko, Wakko, and Dot, a group of animated siblings created in the 1930s by Warner Brothers to star in various cartoons. However, their completely unbridled lack of restraint made them too hard to work with, so they were locked in the studio water tower until their escape nearly 60 years later. Yakko is the sarcastic, toying oldest brother, who seems to love nothing more than to fuck with people and have a hell of a time doing so, which he does so with his frankly insulting amount of charm and sharp wit. Wakko is the oddball, perpetually hungry middle brother, who often sits out of the constant barrage of craziness and falls into the background, but is always happy to smack people around with huge mallets and anvils. Dot is the self-proclaimed cute one, who prefers to provide backup to her brother's shenanigans, yet can be quite silly when needed to as well. While I like them all quite a lot, Yakko is definitely my favorite of the Warner Brothers, just because of the amount of charisma he secretes at all times. Wakko's downright hilarious, and Dot's pretty funny too, but Yakko really takes the cake in terms of enjoyment. Then there's the fan favorites Pinky and the Brain, 2 genetically altered lab mice who plot to take over the world every night. The Brain has a genius intellect and is the one who plots for world domination, while Pinky is the dim-witted tag-along who helps Brain with his schemes. Despite the relative simplicity of their personalities, Pinky and the Brain make up a great comedic dyad, with Brain's deadpan humor and Pinky's random outbursts of
Nerf! Zord! Zord!
Nerf point again.
Point! Nerf! Egad! Point! Nerf! Nerf!
and hobbling up is Slappy Squirrel and Skippy Squirrel. Slappy is a bitter, crotchety, retired cartoon star from the 1940s and onwards who lives in acerbic seclusion, and Skippy is her happy-go-lucky nephew who lives with her for some unexplained reason. Slappy is probably the funniest character next to Yakko, and her acidic barbs against her old nemesis is always extremely amusing to watch. Then we have Bobby, Pesto, and Squit, a flock of pigeons who call themselves the Good Feathers and are a part of an avian mob crime syndicate. You know, like from the movie Goodfellas, which is an R-rated film that's totally not intended for children. Classy, guys. Real classy. So the Good Feathers are just kinda to me in comedy. Not to say they're not completely unfunny, but Pesto in particular is far too repetitious for my liking. And finally, there's Mindy and Buttons. Mindy is an eternally clueless little girl who gets herself into harrowing situations a la Baby's Day Out or
every fucking baby thing ever.
While Buttons is her faithful dog who takes the brunt of the punishment in place of Mindy, making him something of an unsung hero. Hey, if it were me, Buttons, I would just let her die. Just let her die, man. Phew, okay, that's a shitload of characters, but there's a whole bunch more, like Rita and Runt, who's a singing cat and a dumb dog respectively, Minerva Mink, every furry's wet dream, Flavio and Marita, a pair of trendy hippos who do nothing funny at all, Chicken Boo, a giant chicken who pretends to be a human, Dr. Otto von Scratch and Sniff, Ralph the Guard, Hello Nurse, and also a mime. While I admit that some of the characters are hit and miss in terms of their comedic value, there aren't really any I outright dislike, with the exception of Mindy and the hippos. Of course, there are even more minor characters to talk about, but I'm already exhausted from doing all those previous ones, and I don't want to have to do roll call all day long. So with that, let's dive on into the good things. So then, Animaniacs, what goodies do you have in store for me today? Normally I'd kick off this section by talking about the visual style, because it's a good place to start off my list of thoughts, but we're gonna speed past all that, since there's really only one massive thing in particular that makes this series good. Not the story, the characters, or anything traditional, it's literally just the comedy, which is flat out sublime at times. This show knows how to gear itself towards all audiences, making everybody laugh regardless of their age. It has the slapstick and zany action for kids, and the higher brow, double entendre based wit and scathing cynical outlook on the entertainment business in general and those who give themselves airs for adults. The show's favorite pastime is literally just to fuck with rude or egotistical people or famous historical figures and knock them down several pegs with a humorous variety of lethal weapons. But even without the visual gags and slapstick comedic violence angle, it manages to extract even more sillies from the whip-smart references it makes to pop culture and its own eccentric existence, which penetrate your hilarity glands even further. Now, as I've said before, just because something makes references to things or itself, that doesn't necessarily make it funny. Family Guy is a prime example of this. But here, the references are woven into the fabric of the other types of comedy expertly, and skewer things like celebrities and the perplexing nature of the movie-making industry very well. Huh. It's like BoJack Horseman, 21 years before BoJack Horseman even existed. Who knew? Basically what I'm trying to say is, while it's not always perfect, the series succeeds so well at its attempts at comedy that it puts other adult animated shows to shame. And that's funny, since this isn't even really an adult animated series to begin with. It's for kids, yet it excels at appealing at adults much better than actual legit adult cartoons. To put it another way, this cartoon has humor for adults, not adult humor, and that just makes it all that much more enjoyable for any age. Now let's talk about the other big good thing here, and that would be the music. All the music was composed by the late great Richard Stone, whose musical accompaniment infects every frame of this series, infusing them with virulent vibes of exuberant energy that enhances literally every scene. I couldn't even imagine what this series would be like without Mr. Stone's amazing musical talents, and along with that are the absolutely amazing songs which manage to make education fun. Education? Fun, you say? Why, that's simply unheard of, except for that oft-forgotten lone bastion of hope known as... Yes, it's a lot like Schoolhouse Rock in that regard. Nearly every song in this cartoon is educational in some way, but always manages to be entertaining, catchy, and above all else, memorable. I mean, you try to get the nations of the world out of your head after listening to it. It's impossible. United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic, Dominion, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador too. I seriously can't think of a single song that isn't memorable and good in some way, and for that, I doff my hat to you, Mr. Stone. You certainly were a king among music men, and so, to honor your memory, I'm going to sing you one of your classic songs. I am the very model of a cartoon individual. My animation's comical, unusual, and whimsical. I'm quite adept at funny gags, comedic theory. I have read from wicked jokes and stupid puns to anvils that drop on your head. Hey, that's from the Pirates of Penzance. You can't claim that, YouTube. You Hey, don't censor me, you son of a... Am I back? Hey, good, YouTube remembered that fair use exists for 1 second, so let's just move on to the bad things before I get a community strike for having boobs or something. Now, this particular complaint I'm starting off with is very subjective, so don't explode into a triggered, caffeine-fueled frenzy if you happen to disagree with me. Due to the show's structure, everything is bound to appeal to at least somebody, but in my heart, I must admit that, while the majority of the more common characters have segments that are side-splittingly hilarious and undoubtedly fun to watch, there are many segments that just aren't funny. At all, really. While some are just really repetitive with their mostly unfunny jokes, some are just, for lack of a better word, incredibly strange. These are usually the more experimental, one-off segments, but most of them fail to be anything more than odd little diversions. Also, the longer the series goes on, the more it becomes apparent that Yakko, Wakko, and Dot are not on the best of terms. Well, originally they're depicted as having a good, playful relationship with elements of sibling rivalry here and there. Later it seems they just flat out hate being around each other, as evidenced by the completely non-existent fourth wall, and how they behave on set when together. It's kinda sad to see the funniest characters in the show harbor such loathing for one another. And on a final note, I feel this is something I should bring up, even though it never really bothered me, since it may bother some of the more sensitive viewers in the audience? This isn't really a cartoon that could be made today. And why? Because of its depiction of its many female characters. Quite a few of them are over-sexualized to the point of censorship, which may twist the granny panties of some of you strident SJWs out there. I'm not saying this to start an estrogen-fueled shitstorm or anything, I'm just being honest. If you don't like seeing women depicted as sex objects, then you'll probably hate this series. Oh great, the shitstorm started already. Well, that certainly didn't take long. Now, because of this show's structure, I can't say there's one episode in particular that really frizzles my fallopian tubes, so I'm just gonna limit it to segments. And I can think of no better one to say that's my least favorite than every single Katie Kaboom segment. In these segments, a teenager named Katie lives with her overly supportive family, but something low-key and stupid happens, which causes Katie to turn into a horrible monster and destroy everything around her. I dislike these segments immensely because not only are they incredibly repetitive, but I just don't really understand why they're supposed to be funny. Being a teenager and having difficult to control emotions isn't funny, it's embarrassing and horrible, and it's the time of your life when you need people to listen to you the most, yet they're entirely dismissive of your behavior and feelings. I remember as being awful, so I just don't see the appeal here. Maybe they're funnier to a parent who has a shitty teenage son or daughter, but I don't have one, so these segments can fuck right off. So obviously I'm going to say that my favorite segments are the ones with Yakko, Wakko, and Dot, but I want to narrow it down a little bit by talking about my all-time favorite skit from them. It's just glorious, people. So without further ado, I present to you Plane Pals. In this skit, Yakko, Wakko, and Dot are on an airplane with an overly serious, cruel businessman named Ivan Blowski. They then proceed to make him their new special friend, aka bitch, and completely fuck with him the whole time. I swear to Christ, every second of the skit is just pure unbridled hilarity. From shoving a bag of pig shit into Ivan's face, to Wakko as a priest, to throwing a crippled man aside, to, well, this.
And stop making those stupid faces!
This is, in my eyes, when the Warner Brothers are their most hysterically dickish towards a mean douchebag character, so whenever I'm feeling down, I just think back to this and laugh until my tits fall off. Animaniacs is a show that exists inside its own unique little niche and is yet to be matched in terms of quality in its genre. While not every segment hits home with its comedy, the ones that do make it all the much more worth it. It's a series full of life, fun, comedy, and energy, and I will go on loving it forevermore. I give Animaniacs
eyes out of 5.
So, Animaniacs. Is it watchable? Indeed it is. Well, admittedly the animation quality isn't stellar or anything, it does have a nice, cute sort of style to it with a softer color palette that definitely makes it a treat to look at. Is it enjoyable? Well, paying to get a stent in your lungs from laughing too hard sure as hell isn't, but the show itself is. Is it memorable? Well, in terms of its impact on cartoons in general, it definitely contributed to the early 90s cartoon renaissance, but I think it had more of an impact on people in general as opposed to cartoons in general. And considering that it has 2 spin-off series and a movie, it's definitely one that holds a special place in people's hearts. So, thank you for watching the first episode in this year's Animaniacs month-long special. We got 4 more episodes coming after this, so tune in next week as we get even more Animani and totally insane-y while serving up a dish of Wacko's Wish. I fucking love rhyming. Mwah! Good night, everybody! Want to stay up to date with all the latest EyeofSol news? You can follow me on Twitter as well as on Facebook at twitter.com/EyeofSol299 and facebook.com/EyeofSol. I update them every day, so if you want to check out news on the show as well as updates, just follow the links here.